Hi there. Today I'd like to speak to you about decentering whiteness. I do feel that this is probably one of the most difficult struggles for educators because I do think that it has to begin with the critical awareness of the privilege of whiteness by, in fact, white students and white teachers. I think this task can be a violent one, and the reason I think this is because it necessitates that students and teachers look at the ways that they themselves are complicit in maintaining inequality. And that's a very tough thing to do. Once they've recognized that they have this privilege and this privilege is elucidated, students and teachers then can be held accountable for it. If a student can acknowledge the ways in which their whiteness confers privilege upon them, then it can be followed with an attempt to decenter it. As Young pointed out, and accurately I might add, it should be followed by confronting privilege and perhaps being open to relinquishing power by having to answer to others, the others who speak from different, less privileged perspectives. And Young states that individual identities are projects, and she emphasizes that agency is the most vital component of this project, of this development. So, decentering whiteness can have the capacity to motivate students to reflect on themselves and, to be honest, to refigure their identities in ways that are mobilizing, in ways that are transformative. And of course, that's our ultimate goal as educators. Now, the rebuilding of identities, once you've called attention to this whiteness and you're trying to decenter it, you've got to then rebuild the identity. And this is important because awareness alone is not enough to support social justice. Educators often, myself included, are quite aware of theories of difference. But still, we enjoy the privileges that dominance affords us. So, operating under a cloak of equality, we are actually perpetuating racism because we have a failure to relinquish our privilege. Or, at the very least, we should use the privilege to somehow destabilize the forces of whiteness in the classroom. But by being aware of failing to act, educators sustain the invisibility of social inequalities and reproduce the devaluing of social difference. So, what I'd like to say is this. When we intellectualize multiculturalism in a classroom, but fail to problematize institutionalized social injustice, we're just maintaining the status quo. And as educators, we need to attempt to decenter whiteness with our students, but we also need to acknowledge and battle with the implication of our own social positionality. And that becomes tricky because it's not just about us and them. It's not just about remedying students' identities and helping them to build them and to be transformative in that way. We also have to look at ourselves, and that becomes a challenge because a lot of us are resistant to doing so. So what I'm getting at is that change can only be enacted when educators actually begin from within, when we use knowledge of how the self is positioned with the other, and we problematize how people are located in relation to dominant social groups. I think once we're able to do that for ourselves, we really can make the difference for students. So I do hope that some of this advice is useful to you, and perhaps you can take it into your classroom as you reflect on yourself and how you might decenter whiteness in your own classrooms. Thank you.